Hello everybody, today I want to tell you about one of my favorite YouTube videos of all time. I think seeing this video for the first time might have been the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. It's been a long time since I saw it now, it's like 8 or 9 years ago. But in it there's this Swedish kid, and this kid is so Swedish, by the way. He's got like the hair gel going with the spiky bangs. He's like 12 or 13. He's in a tight v-neck t-shirt from H&M. And he's just seen the latest Justin Bieber music video, and he's gone on like the family computer in the living room, and he's freaking out talking about how much he hates Justin Bieber and Justin Bieber fans.
Justin Bieber is a totally extremely fuckface.
This video hits me on so many levels. First of all, the Swedish accent is amazing. The Swinglish is like, mwah, it's 10 out of 10. He's talking about how he's gonna get the knife and stab you in the ass and pussy, motherfuckers.
Go to your house and fucking kill you in your ass with a fucking sword.
And as the video goes on, he gets like more and more agitated, and at some point he goes to the kitchen and gets like his mom's bread knife, and he's talking about how he's gonna stab Justin Bieber in the dick with it.
Fuck.
I think another reason this video really made me laugh is I feel like I understand where the kid is coming from. I feel like I know what he's going through, and I would like to find him and, get him to put the knife down and explain to him that he probably doesn't actually hate Justin Bieber, which might blow his mind, but it's true if you think about it. There are many musical artists out there that you don't enjoy and that you don't listen to, but the fact that they exist doesn't upset you. What drives a kid like this nuts, I think, is when something exists that you don't see the appeal of, but everybody else around you is obsessing about it. Especially if you're like a shitty Swedish kid, you go to school, all the girls hit puberty like a year before you, that they're taller than you now, they're not giving you any attention, and you're being asked to compete with a kid who is like 5 years older than you and a multi-millionaire superstar with the voice of an angel, and you're just this Swedish kid. You're probably not even that good at Counter-Strike 6.0 or Global Offensive, so what are you gonna do? You turn on the radio and they're playing the songs, people are putting the posters on their walls, and then somebody sends you the latest video, you watch it, and I think that's when you have a breakdown and you go on, your dad's computer and you make a video like this. The reason I'm talking about this is that's the exact relationship I have with the character that is on the screen right now. The longest running gag on my channel basically is the fact that I make fun of Bryan and I make fun of Bryan players. And for the longest time, people have been asking me to make a video about why I don't like Bryan. And the reason I haven't done that is I don't want to sit here and go, stop it, stop liking the things I don't like, because if I do that, I know what that turns me into.
You're fucking dead, bitch. You're totally fuckface.
So in this video, I will be talking about why I don't like Bryan. I just wanted to let you know, first of all, that I'm going to try and do it with a sense of self-awareness. In my defense, though, there is a defining difference between Bryan and Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber has some straight bangers out there. There is no intrinsic quality whatsoever to the character design of Bryan. This is pretty much the worst character design in the history of all video games. It's an extremely basic character that appeals to and is played and enjoyed exclusively by stupid fucking idiots who hate themselves and others and who suck at the game and at life in general. But before I get into why this move list is so extremely basic and dumb, let's talk about a couple of the other reasons why this character seems to be designed to drive specifically me insane. It's like a year ago now, many months ago, I had a day where just every single opponent I played against online was like a really high level, really compact Bryan player, and I'm not trying to say that you have to be high level in order to be successful with this character, but it was just one of those days, and I was sitting around thinking about how much I hate Bryan, and just then, the main man all of a sudden uploads a video called something like, why Bryan Fury is the greatest design in the history of fighting games, or something like that, and it felt like a personal attack, but it gets even better. Last night, I'm sitting around thinking about, maybe I should finally record that salty-ass Bryan video about why I don't like him. And as I'm sitting around thinking about doing that, the Blasted Salami uploads that new, long, beautiful overview video about all the characters in the game. And because I'm that salty, I skip to the Bryan section, and they give him a 5 out of 5 for difficulty. Which, I mean, I happen to believe that this is probably the most easy to win with an easy to use character in the game. So I'm thinking like, okay, if Bryan is 5 stars, what about an actually difficult character that I like? If he's a 5, then Elisa is at least an 80, right? So I go to the Elisa part of the video, and they've given her a 4 out of 5. So Arya, I can't believe that you did that to me, and we're going to talk about that very soon. I'm going to let you know what I think. But, you know, it was a great video. Congratulations on it. Looks amazing. Very entertaining. But yeah. And he's also one of the most popular characters in the world. I think in Asia he might be #1. I know that he was back in the arcade days. For a fact, I saw statistics that show that if he's not #1 now, he's definitely in the top 3 all these years later on PC and PlayStation. So if you're like me and you hate playing against Bryan, tough shit. It's going to make up a large chunk of all the Tekken you ever get to play, which is of course going to impact your experience with this franchise as a whole. Well, let's talk a bit about this extremely dumb and overpowered move list. We can actually use that video that Arya made as a jumping off point, because in it they give like a couple of words that describe the play style, the specialty of a character, and Bryan is described as a lockdown character, which I actually think is a pretty good description, because he's very good at just constantly resetting himself to advantage and never letting the opponent take a turn, as he's also walking you into corners just with insane pressure. But he also shuts down your ability to move away and escape that pressure using movement, which is the way you would typically fight against a character that is rushing you down and specializes in rush down. But what's interesting about describing this character as a lockdown character is I think there's another word you can use to describe that. If your character specializes in never letting the opponent take a turn and always being at advantage, in this game that's called winning. And I think if your playstyle and the thing that you specialize in deeply is winning, then it's a pretty good character, and I think the designers might have to go back to the drawing board. Let's talk about a couple of the big offenders. The hatchet kick, I think this is probably the best slow in the entire game by a margin. If I had to describe what this move does for you, it's basically teleport across the entire screen, get a giant chunk of advantage, deal a lot of damage, and go into a position where you will apply an inescapable vortex of constant plus frames until you inevitably win the round. So if that sounds like a pretty good move, guess what it is. It also has counter hit properties, and you get guaranteed stuff on the ground, so there you go. Back one is another great example. Both of these moves can like theoretically be walked around, and you know, I do it sometimes, everybody does it sometimes, but it's one of those things where it's not a consistent enough strategy to counter these moves that you can really rely on it to survive. And in any situation where you would have successfully dealt with one of these moves, he could just do the thing that kills you if you try and do that. But I think if I had to like remove or change one thing about this character when it comes to this pressure, honestly, the move that I hate the most, that I have the biggest problem with, is this 1+2. And the reason for that is, like I said earlier, when you're playing against a rushdown in this game, if you're playing against, you know, something like a Law, someone who's just pounding you with pressure, there are usually openings for you to slip under or out to the side or backdash out. For example, you know, Zafina's Scarecrow mix-up or dive kick pressure from Elisa, you can backdash out. The fact that Bryan can go to this mid right here, safe on block homing. It doesn't have like a lot of damage unless you do the extensions, which exist and are pretty good, honestly, because you can mix them. But it's just that thing where, okay, he does this, you block it, he has plus frames, you try and move, and he locks you down. He does this, he gets plus frames, so you can't do anything but try and move maybe, and he locks you down. pretty much all of, and this is the other, apart from the pressure, the other big thing that really drives me crazy about this character is I think he might be the safest character in the entire game. I feel like he exposes himself to tiny amounts of risk, basically no risk at all. I think the only opportunities really to hurt or deal damage to Bryan is you pretty much have to low parry him, right? You have to low parry a hatchet kick, or you have to low parry down jab. And he loves his down jab. It's really good for him because moves like orbital, they're not punishable. Excuse me, they just give you disadvantage. So when you're at that disadvantage, you go straight into a down jab, and your opponent tries to take their turn, and then, maybe you do a northern cross, and you blow them up for doing that. Counter hits are amazing. Your while standing stuff, this is 12 frames to impact, which is why they always wake up with it, and it blows you up when you try to apply Oki. I mean, just a nightmare. But the safety is insane, and the keep out is insane, mainly because of this move right here. One of the candidates I've mentioned before, I think this might be one of the best moves in the game. It's up there. And the reason Lily was catapulted into the stratosphere in terms of strength recently is they basically gave her a version of this move. So you're dealing with something completely safe that cannot really be dealt with in a lot of ways because of the amount of pushback that it has, right? You can use it from an extreme range, and it's very difficult to deal with. I've seen it punished a couple of times in my life. It doesn't really happen, but when you get that counter hit, it's going to blow the opponent up for all that damage, and it's crazy. Doesn't help that he sounds like a dumb bitch. Doesn't help that he has the original Snake Edge that the move category I hate is named after. It's just perfectly he's a genetically modified monster just to make me crazy. But the final thing I want to say about Bryan, now that we're talking about him and I'm getting this stuff out of my system, is that I think the reason people talk about Bryan as being an advanced character, and he definitely isn't, is the fact that you have the taunt jet upper, and the taunt jet upper is an extremely difficult technique to pull off. I mean, don't get me wrong, this is extremely difficult to do. Thing is, right, it's difficult enough to do that it's not a viable strategy in a competitive game, and if you attempt it over and over, you might eventually get one. And you can put that in a clip, and you can send it to a clip channel or upload it to your own and go, look, I did a taunt jet upper in a match, and it's going to feel really cool and good. But I think there should be a law that says if you want to upload a clip of you getting taunt jet upper, you have to upload all of the attempts that failed before you got it. Basically, my point is that it gets to a point where this technique is difficult enough that you shouldn't do it. And turns out that Bryan players actually don't. If you go and play a bunch of games against even really good Bryan players today, if they're 2 rounds up and they're about to just completely annihilate you, they might attempt it for a goof, but for the most part, people just do not do taunt jet upper. It's just not really viable. And so, point being, if this technique isn't something you ever do in order to be successful with the character, does it matter? Does it count towards the execution difficulty of the character? If you're thinking about it in terms of the potential of what you could do if you could execute perfectly, then yes, I guess it is difficult because of the taunt jet upper. But everything else is literally press win buttons. Just press win buttons. Never, have any, never be punishable, never be unsafe, never even be at disadvantage. Go ka, bully your opponent into the corner, and win infinitely and forever. It's basically the character design, as far as I'm concerned, and I know so few people agree with me, but maybe that's fine. I mean, the amount of comments I get from even friends, people I love, who say my characters are for bitches and really dumb and overpowered and whatever, it's just part, I think, of playing these games. And I think, in a strange way, one of the reasons we enjoy them, or enjoy talking and bitching about them. So there you have it, just a couple of words on Bryan. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys again very soon.